I still remember the exact moment I realized I might be in trouble, when the guy behind the camera stopped filming the bride and started filming me. Not in a creepy way, at least not at first, but you know that feeling when someone's gaze lingers just a little too long? And it's through a lens that's always pointed at everyone else? Yeah, that. So here's how it went down. I was at my cousin's wedding last summer, just a regular guest, trying to survive a day full of awkward small talk, bad dance moves, and enough champagne to make anyone's head spin. Weddings aren't really my scene. I usually find corners to hide in, nursing a drink or making jokes to whoever's close enough to hear. But this one felt different. Maybe because I'd been single for too long, or because my cousin's fiance was one of those impossibly photogenic people. But I was there, fully present and trying to soak it all in. The venue was this beautiful old barn converted into a rustic-chic event space. Twinkling fairy lights hung from the rafters, and the smell of fresh pine mixed with expensive perfume. It was the kind of place that photographers love, because every angle looks like a postcard. Speaking of photographers, the wedding had a full crew, a team of 3 people, including a videographer who was mostly invisible at first, blending into the background as he captured the day's highlights. I didn't even know his name until he introduced himself during the reception. His name was Jamie, tall, with messy, dark hair that looked like he'd just run his hands through it 100 times, which, honestly, I think he did, and eyes that were perpetually scanning, always searching for the perfect shot. I noticed him during the ceremony first. He was crouched near the altar, camera steady, catching the vows, the tears, the smiles. I caught him glancing at me a few times, but I chalked it up to coincidence. Maybe I was just standing out awkwardly in the back row. But then came the reception, and Jamie's camera started pointing in my direction more often. He wasn't just filming me, he was capturing moments when I wasn't paying attention, laughing with my cousin's friends, fiddling with my drink, trying to avoid the dance floor. I kind of found it amusing at first, like I was an unexpected subject in their film. But by the time he sidled up to me with a quick smile and asked if I'd mind doing a short interview for the video, I was definitely intrigued. Here's the thing. Weddings are weird when you're watching through a lens, like you're suddenly both the observer and the observed. And Jamie wasn't just any observer. He had this way of making me feel like I was the only one in the room, even when the dance floor was packed and the noise was deafening. I told him yes, mostly because I was curious. Who was this guy who kept turning his camera my way? Why was he so interested in me? And honestly, I was a little flattered. So there I was, mid-reception, talking to a stranger with a camera pointed right at me, when I noticed the way his eyes softened every time I laughed, and the way his fingers adjusted the focus like he wanted to see me clearer. I didn't know then that this day was going to mess with everything I thought I wanted from a night like this. But I did know one thing. I wanted to know more about the guy behind the lens. After that little interview with Jamie, things got interesting fast. I mean, weddings aren't exactly the easiest places to have a real conversation, but somehow, between the clinking glasses and the cheesy playlist, we managed to find a quiet corner near a stack of hay bales. I don't even remember what I said at first, probably some lame joke about how awkward I was at weddings. But Jamie just smiled and nodded like he actually wanted to hear more. He asked me about what I did for work, my family, if I came to many weddings, stuff like that. Normal questions, but the way he asked them made it feel like he was genuinely curious, not just making small talk to kill time between shots. Jamie's voice was low and easy, like the kind of guy you'd want to stay up late chatting with, not just some random guy running around with a camera. When my cousin's speech started, he got up to film again, but this time, he didn't disappear. Instead, he stood nearby, still keeping an eye on me, and I caught myself stealing glances back at him. There was something in the way he moved, calm but focused, that made me want to figure him out. Most people at weddings are all about putting on a show, but Jamie seemed real. Like, no filter, no pretending. As the night wore on, the dance floor got crowded with tipsy relatives and friends, everyone trying to show off their moves or just having a good time. I was standing near the bar, nursing a second drink, when Jamie came back over. "Hey," he said, camera slung over his shoulder now. "Want to take a break from all this?" He nodded toward a narrow hallway that led to a little green space behind the barn. I hesitated, partly because I wasn't sure what I was getting into. and partly because I felt like I should probably stay with the group. But Jamie's invitation was casual enough that I didn't feel pressured, so I followed him outside. The night air hit me like a cold splash, sharp and refreshing after the warm chaos inside. The backyard was quieter, scattered with picnic tables and strings of lights that barely lit up the grass. Jamie leaned against the railing, pulling his camera bag off. "I'm glad you came out here," he said, eyes catching the light in a way that made me catch my breath. "It's easier to talk without the chaos." I laughed. "Yeah, I was about ready to disappear into the shadows." He smiled, and for a moment the only sound was the distant music and crickets. Then he looked at me, really looked, like he was trying to figure out if I was for real or just another wedding guest passing time. "So, why do you think I kept filming you?" he asked. I shrugged, feeling suddenly nervous. "I was hoping you'd tell me." Jamie laughed, a short, genuine sound that made my chest tighten. "Honestly, you were different. Not just the usual awkward guy at a wedding vibe. You looked like you were somewhere else, even surrounded by all that noise. I wanted to capture that. That caught me off guard. No one had ever said anything like that before. Most people assume awkwardness means I'm just shy or uninterested, but Jamie saw something else, maybe even a little mystery. We ended up talking for what felt like hours. He told me about how he got into wedding videography, how he loved catching moments that people usually miss. The little glances, the nervous smiles, the quiet corners where real feelings show up. And me? I told him about my job, my failures at dating, and how I usually feel like an outsider in social scenes like this. At some point, we fell into this easy rhythm, like two people who had known each other longer than just a few hours. The awkwardness melted away, replaced by this weird but wonderful connection. When we finally went back inside, the party was winding down. People were slow dancing, couple by couple, and the band was playing a soft ballad. Jamie tucked his camera away and reached out, gently taking my hand. "Dance with me?" he asked. I blinked, half expecting it to be a joke, but his eyes were serious, hopeful. So I nodded. And just like that, I found myself in his arms, swaying to the music, feeling like, maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a wedding story I'd tell later. Maybe it was the start of something else entirely. But of course, with how things usually go for me, that's when the unexpected happened. And you know me, it wouldn't be a proper story without a little chaos. We were swaying slowly, the soft music wrapping around us like a blanket, and honestly, it felt like something straight out of a rom-com cliché. Except it wasn't cheesy at all. It felt real. Jamie's hand was warm in mine, and there was this gentle pressure in his eyes, like he was seeing me more clearly than anyone had in a long time. For a moment, I almost forgot we were at a crowded wedding reception, surrounded by noisy guests and clinking glasses. Then, right as I was about to say something, probably some awkward joke to break the tension, the unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, this loud crash echoed through the barn, followed by a chorus of startled gasps and then frantic shouts. Jamie's grip on my hand tightened, and we both turned toward the noise. Turns out, one of the tables had tipped over. Someone's toddler had gotten loose and ran straight into the bridesmaid's table, sending wine glasses and plates flying everywhere. The bride's mom was shrieking, and a couple of older guests were scrambling to save the cake from imminent doom. I could see Jamie's camera already half raised, instinct kicking in. "I gotta catch this," he muttered, but his eyes flicked back to me, and I caught the hesitation there, as if he didn't want to pull away. I gave a quick go, with a smile, even though my heart was pounding a little in that weird, is this going to be disaster or just chaos way. He ducked back inside, and I stayed outside, watching the aftermath unfold from behind the barn. People were laughing nervously, cleaning up spilled wine, and the toddler was now safely in someone's arms, looking way too pleased with himself. I leaned against the railing and realized I didn't want the night to end. Not this way, anyway. A few minutes later, Jamie came back out, wiping his sweaty forehead and grinning like he'd just survived a triathlon. "Well, that was dramatic," he said, sliding his camera strap off his neck. I laughed. "Drama seems to follow you," he shrugged, eyes twinkling. "It keeps things interesting." There was a beat where neither of us said anything, just looking at each other like two people who were suddenly figuring out what the hell was happening. Then Jamie asked, "So, what do you want to do now? The night's still young." I shrugged again, half smiling. "Honestly, I have no idea. I'm not exactly Mr. Party Animal." "No worries," he said, biting his lip like he was thinking. "There's a 24-hour diner a few miles from here. You in?" The idea of leaving the party behind and just chilling somewhere quiet sounded like exactly what I needed. Plus, hanging out with Jamie didn't feel like a chore or some forced social obligation. It felt like something I wanted. So I nodded. We piled into his beat-up old car, and the drive was one of those rare moments where silence isn't awkward but comfortable. We talked about everything and nothing. Our favorite movies, terrible dating stories, the weird quirks that make us who we are. Jamie told me about the time he almost ruined a wedding by accidentally filming the best man speech while the mic was off. I confessed that I once showed up to a wedding in the wrong outfit and only realized it halfway through the ceremony. By the time we reached the diner, it was close to 3 a.m., and the place was nearly empty except for a few tired-looking night shift workers and a pair of late-night regulars nursing their coffee. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of greasy diner food made me feel unexpectedly nostalgic. We slid into a booth, ordered way too much food, and settled in. Jamie kept stealing glances at me, and I caught myself smiling more than I had in weeks. The way he listened when I talked, the way he made space for me in this crazy, loud world, it was something I hadn't realized I was craving until that night. After a while, I got a little bold and asked, "So, what made you want to be a wedding videographer? Seems like a tough gig." He paused, poking at his fries. "I guess I like the idea of capturing real moments. Weddings are chaotic and messy, but they're full of love and hope. And sometimes, you catch these tiny, unrepeatable things that mean everything." I nodded. "Yeah, like how you kept filming me." Jamie looked up, and there it was again. That looked like he saw straight through me. "You were the moment I was looking for," he said quietly. I wanted to laugh it off, but my throat tightened, and instead, I just smiled. The night stretched on, and as the diner started to close, Jamie's hand found mine across the table again. We didn't say anything, but I knew we both felt it. The unspoken promise that this wasn't just a one-time thing. On the drive back to the barn, the streets were empty, and the world felt softer, quieter. I realized I was already dreading the end of the night, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to see where this could go. Maybe Jamie was just a fleeting midnight movie scene in my life, or maybe he was the real deal. Either way, when we pulled up to the venue, I didn't want to say goodbye. But life loves to throw curveballs, and just as I was gathering the courage to ask if we could meet again, Jamie glanced over and said, "Hey, can I be honest about something?" My heart skipped. "Filming weddings is my job," he said. "But sometimes I feel like my heart's somewhere else. I don't usually get close to people at work. It gets messy." I nodded, understanding more than I expected. "Yeah, I get that." He smiled, this time a bit shy, and said, "But I want to see you again. No cameras, no weddings, just us." And just like that, the whole night shifted into something neither of us was prepared for. But maybe that was the point, because sometimes the best stories start when you stop trying to make sense of them. I sat there for a moment, Jamie's words hanging between us like an unspoken invitation and a warning wrapped into one. No cameras, no weddings, just us. It sounded simple, but I knew from experience that the just us part was usually the hardest. Real life isn't a highlight reel. It's more like a messy behind-the-scenes blooper tape. Still, something about the way Jamie said it made me want to believe. "Yeah," I finally said, voice a little shaky. "I'd like that." He smiled, relief washing over his face. "Great, I'll text you then? Please." We stayed there in the car a little longer, neither of us quite ready to step back into the party. The noise had died down to a dull roar inside, but out here, the world felt quieter, softer. I didn't want the night to end, but I also felt like I'd been holding my breath all day and could finally exhale. Eventually, we got out and walked back inside together. The wedding was winding down, people hugging, saying their goodbyes, and a handful of stragglers lingering with tired smiles. My cousin found me, pulled me into a quick hug, and thanked me for coming. Jamie gave me a quick nod from across the room before slipping away to pack up his gear. I lingered by the exit, waiting until I saw him heading toward me with his camera bag slung over his shoulder. "So," I began, awkward as hell. "When do you want to do this just us thing?" Jamie chuckled. "How about tomorrow? I'm terrible at texting, so I'm glad we did this in person." I made a face. That's not a great excuse, but I'll let it slide. We exchanged numbers, and he promised to pick me up around 7. Then, we went our separate ways, but I kept catching myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting him to be there waiting for me. The next day felt like the longest day ever. I found myself replaying last night in my head more times than I care to admit, wondering what I was getting myself into. Was Jamie just being nice? Was this a one-off thing that would fizzle out as soon as we hung up the phone? Or was there something real here? When his text finally came, "See you at 7 smiley face," I almost dropped my phone. I got ready like a teenager going on a first date, even though I hadn't seen Jamie since last night. When he showed up in his car, the same messy hair, same easy smile, it felt comfortable, like sliding into a favorite sweater. We drove out to this little hiking trail Jamie knew about, somewhere away from the city noise. He said he liked to come here to clear his head when wedding chaos got to be too much. I don't hike much, but I was willing to learn. The air was crisp, and the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the path. We walked side by side, no cameras, no pressure, just two guys talking about stuff that actually mattered. Jamie told me about his dreams beyond wedding videos. He wanted to make documentaries one day, tell real stories that didn't come with flower arrangements and cheesy speeches. I told him about my own little ambitions, dreams I'd shoved to the back of my mind because they didn't seem practical. At one point, Jamie stopped and turned to me. "You're different when you're out here, not just at weddings. You're real." I blinked, caught off guard. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or a roast. He laughed, the kind of laughter that makes your chest feel warm. Definitely a compliment. We kept walking, and the tension between us melted into something lighter, more hopeful. When we reached a little clearing overlooking the city, Jamie pulled me close. The view was stunning, but honestly, I was more focused on the way his eyes held mine. "I'm glad I pointed my camera at you," he said softly. "Me too," I admitted, and then, without overthinking it, we kissed. It was gentle and a little hesitant, like we were both trying to figure out if this was real or just another fleeting moment. But it felt right. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was hiding or pretending. I felt seen. The days that followed were a whirlwind of texts, late-night calls, and stolen moments. Jamie was still working weddings, but now I was part of his story too. Sometimes in front of the camera, sometimes just beside him, laughing at the chaos or sharing quiet coffee in the mornings. Of course, it wasn't all perfect. There were moments of doubt, like when he had to cancel plans because of a last-minute shoot, or when I caught myself wondering if this was just a summer fling. But each time, the connection we'd started kept pulling us back together. One night, a few weeks in, Jamie invited me over to his apartment. It was small but cozy, walls covered with film posters and shelves stacked with editing gear. We cooked dinner together. Well, Jamie did most of the cooking, and I was the enthusiastic taste tester, and then sprawled on the couch watching old movies. At some point, I looked over and realized I was exactly where I wanted to be. Not just physically, but with someone who made me feel like I mattered. Like I was more than just a background character in someone else's story. As Jamie reached for my hand, I squeezed it gently. "Thanks for filming me that day," I said quietly. He smiled, a little shy. "Thanks for letting me." And even though I didn't know what the future held, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Because sometimes, when you least expect it, life points the camera right at you, and suddenly, you become the star of your own story. A few days after that night at Jamie's place, I started realizing that this whole thing was getting real, and not just in the fun, butterflies and late-night texts kind of way. I mean, yeah, the butterflies were there, but there was also this creeping sense of vulnerability sitting in the back of my mind. The kind that makes you question if you're ready to let someone in, especially when you've been the background guy for so long. Jamie was still juggling wedding gigs like a pro, always on the move with his camera gear, but somehow he carved out time for us. We'd meet for late dinners, take long walks, or just crash at his apartment, binge-watching documentaries or weird indie movies he insisted I watch. He had this easy confidence that made me feel safe, and I was starting to realize how much I'd been craving that without even knowing. One Friday evening, Jamie called me out of the blue. "Got a free hour? I need a second pair of eyes on a wedding edit." I was tempted to say no. I had plans to just chill and decompress, but something about his voice made me say yes. I grabbed my laptop and headed over to his place. Once there, he showed me the footage from a wedding he'd shot a few days earlier. The usual stuff. Nervous groomsmen, teary-eyed parents, that moment when the bride's veil catches the wind just right. As we watched, Jamie paused the video and turned to me. "Tell me what you think." I squinted at the screen. "Honestly, you have a knack for catching those little moments nobody expects. Like this one." I pointed to a clip of the groom sneaking a smile while the officiant's back was turned. It's subtle but says so much. Jamie smiled, clearly pleased. "Thanks. It's what I love about this job. People's real emotions are messy, not perfect, but that's where the story lives." There was a long pause, and then he said quietly, "I feel like I can be messy with you too." I looked over, surprised by the honesty. "Messy how?" He shrugged, sheepish. "Like, not always polished or ready. Sometimes I'm just tired or stressed from work and don't know how to switch off. But with you, I want to be better." My heart squeezed. It was one thing to flirt and laugh, but this was real. I reached out and took his hand. "Jamie, I'm not perfect either, but I want to be messy with you too." We smiled, and for that moment, the whole world felt a little less scary. But just when I thought we were cruising along, life threw a curveball. About a week later, Jamie got a call from one of the big wedding companies he freelanced for. They wanted to offer him a full-time gig with better pay, more stability, and a chance to work on bigger projects. It sounded amazing, except there was a catch. The job was in another state, almost 1,000 miles away. When he told me, I could see the conflict in his eyes. It was the kind of opportunity you can't ignore, but it meant uprooting everything and everyone. We spent that night talking about what this meant for us. The idea of long distance made my stomach twist. I knew relationships could survive that, but could ours? We were still new, still figuring out who we were together. "I don't want to lose what we have," Jamie said, voice low. "But I don't want to give up this chance either." I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. Neither do I. We decided to take it one day at a time, but the tension was there every time we said goodbye, every time the phone rang, and it wasn't one of US. A few weeks into this new, uncertain chapter, Jamie surprised me with something. He showed up at my door one evening, camera bag in tow, and grinned like a kid on Christmas. "I thought you could use a distraction," he said, pulling me into a hug. We spent the night shooting a little project together. Just us, no weddings, no pressure. Jamie filmed me talking about my favorite books, my weird hobbies, the things I was scared to share with most people. And I filmed him talking about his dreams, his fears, the parts of himself he rarely showed. It was beautiful and awkward and so raw that it made me want to keep doing this forever. When we finally sat down to watch the footage, Jamie looked at me, eyes soft. "No matter where I go, this is home." I squeezed his hand. "Me too." That night, I realized that sometimes love isn't about perfect timing or easy choices. It's about showing up, even when it's scary, even when you don't know how it's going to end. Jamie and I didn't have all the answers, but we had each other. And for now, that was enough. Because sometimes the best stories aren't the ones that end neatly. They're the ones you keep writing, day by day, with someone willing to hold the camera steady while you find your way. Months passed, and the question of distance slowly became less of a looming threat and more of a challenge we were willing to face together. Jamie took the new job, reluctant but excited, and we found our rhythm in the chaos of weekend visits, endless video calls, and sharing the little details of our days that kept us close even when miles apart. It wasn't always easy. There were late nights when one of us was too tired to talk, missed moments that couldn't be shared in real time, and the constant undercurrent of uncertainty about what the future held. But through it all, we held on to the foundation we'd built, the honesty, the quiet understanding, and the simple joy of being seen. One chilly autumn afternoon, Jamie surprised me by showing up at my apartment with a small, worn notebook tucked under his arm. He'd been working on a documentary project about ordinary people's stories, and in it, he'd included footage from our little film sessions. The candid moments, the laughter, even the quiet ones where words failed. We sat together on my couch, watching the footage unfold. It wasn't polished or cinematic, but it was ours. Raw and imperfect. Like us. When the video ended, Jamie looked at me, eyes shining. "I don't know where this is going, exactly, but I know I want you in it." I reached for his hand, warm and steady in mine. Me too. No matter what comes next. In that moment, it struck me how far we'd come. From a chance glance through a camera lens at a chaotic wedding, to this shared space of trust and hope. Love wasn't a perfect script, or a fairy tale ending. It was messy, uncertain, and beautiful all at once. And maybe that was exactly what made it real. As we sat side by side, the city humming softly beyond the window, I realized that sometimes life points the lens at you, not to capture a single moment, but to invite you into a story you get to write together. Frame by frame, day by day. No matter where we ended up, that was the story I wanted to be a part of.